The birth of the self-opening scene, soft orchestral hum, a slow fade from darkness into a dimly lit study. Books, candles, the ticking of a clock, narrator, measured, contemplative tone. In a world that had lost its soul, one man dared to go looking for it, not in the heavens, not in the scriptures, but in the depths of his own mind. The year is 1913. Europe stands at the edge of a great war, and Carl Gustav Jung, a respected psychiatrist and scholar, stands at the edge of another, the war within. To the world, he is a man of science, a rising star beside Sigmund Freud, shaping a new language for the human psyche. But beneath his calm exterior, something ancient stirs, a whisper, a presence, a mirror he cannot look away from, and it begins, as all awakenings do, with a dream, the dream that broke the world in the fall of 1913. Jung dreams of a vast flood covering Europe, cities swallowed, thousands drowning, the land turning to ice. He wakes trembling, unsure whether he has seen a vision or a delusion. Months later, the Great War begins. For Jung, it is not mere coincidence, it is revelation. The war outside mirrors the war within. Humanity, he realizes, is not driven by reason, but by forces far older and darker, the unconscious. And now those forces have broken free. He begins to see the world, and himself, differently. The boundaries between dream and waking blur. Symbols begin to speak. He feels something vast pressing from within, not madness, but meaning. And so Jung makes a decision that will define his life. He will descend into the depths of his own mind and record everything he finds. The descent begins. He calls this journey his confrontation with the unconscious. It is not research. It is pilgrimage. He abandons the outer world, his lectures, his prestige, even his friendship with Freud, and turns inward. Every night, Jung sits in his study, waiting for the visions to come. And they do, he writes. I let myself drop. I let myself fall into what is dark and unknown. I felt the full force of the chaos within me. What he finds there defies logic. A world of symbols, voices, gods, and shadows. He meets a wise old man named Philemon, a serpent, a red figure called Elijah, and a divine feminine presence he names Salome. Each is both real and unreal, fragments of his psyche. Yet alive with archetypal power, he begins to understand that the human mind is not a blank slate, but a cosmos. A living theater where ancient patterns, myths, gods, and instincts play out again and again through us. The breaking of the masking, this descent. Jung realizes something terrifying. The man he thought he was is only a mask. He calls it the persona, the face we show the world. A necessary illusion that helps us survive in society, but hides the truth of who we are. Jung writes, the persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society, a kind of mask designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. He sees how the persona can become a prison, a false self built from expectations, approval, and fear. And when the mask becomes too tight, the soul begins to suffocate. Jung's descent is an act of rebellion, a tearing away of the persona to uncover what lies beneath. But the deeper he goes, the more he realizes that what lies beneath is not peace, but chaos, a chaos that must be faced if the soul is ever to be born, the chaos within. For Jung, the unconscious is not simply a reservoir of repressed memories. It is an entire realm of being. He sees visions of fire, blood, ancient gods, serpents, and angels. He paints them, writes them, speaks with them. He treats them as real, because for the psyche, he learns that there is not one mind within us, but many, a council of forces, some personal, some collective, all seeking expression. He writes, I stood helpless before the chaos of my soul. But I discovered that if I dared to speak to it, it answered. This is the beginning of Jung's greatest idea, the dialogue with the unconscious, not repression, not control, dialogue, relationship. He begins to see the psyche not as an enemy, but as a living organism striving for balance and wholeness. And that wholeness he names the self, the true center of the psyche. The divine spark that unites conscious and unconscious, light and shadow. The self awakens. The self is not the ego. It is not the I that speaks or thinks or acts in the world. It is deeper, the totality of who we are, both known and unknown. For Jung, discovering the self is the true meaning of life. Every conflict, every dream, every relationship is a step toward it. He writes, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this path is not easy. To find the self, one must pass through the shadow, the dark mirror of all that we repress, deny, or fear within ourselves." Jung feels this shadow rising in him during his descent. The rage, the fear, the desire for power, the temptation to godhood. He does not flee it. He listens. He records. He paints. He realizes that to become whole, one must make peace with the darkness, to see it not as evil, but as energy misunderstood. He writes, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And so, night after night, Jung makes the darkness conscious, the birth of the Red Book. For 6 years. Jung records his visions in a massive illuminated manuscript, the Red Book. It is part diary, part scripture, part dream. In its pages, he writes dialogues with his soul, paints cosmic landscapes, and maps the mythic geography of the mind. It is both art and revelation. To Jung, it is not madness, it is initiation. He is becoming what he calls a psychonaut, an explorer of the inner world. In the Red Book, Jung encounters his daimon, the inner guide that leads him through the underworld of the psyche. This daimon is both terrifying and divine. It teaches him humility, patience, and reverence for the mysteries that lie beyond reason. Jung comes to believe that every human being has such a guide, a spiritual compass hidden within, pointing toward wholeness, but few ever listen, because the voice of the daimon is drowned out by the noise of the world, the mirror of the soul. Jung begins to understand that every human being is a mirror, a reflection of the infinite, seeking to know itself. Each of us is a microcosm of the cosmos, a fragment of the divine trying to remember its source. He writes, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." This is the essence of Jung's journey, to turn the gaze inward, to confront the images that rule us, to discover that the gods we once worshipped outside now live within the human soul. The mirror of the soul is both beautiful and terrible. It shows us our light and our shadow, our potential and our pain. To look into it is to see what we have always been and what we still might become. The fall of the rational world as Jung explores these inner realities. The world outside collapses into chaos. The First World War breaks out, a mass eruption of the collective unconscious he had foreseen. He sees in it the same forces that he wrestles with within himself, the shadow of an entire civilization, projected outward. To Jung, this confirms everything. He realizes that the psychological and the historical are not separate. The fate of nations is shaped by the dreams of men. He writes, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The same is true of humanity itself. If we do not face our collective shadow, it will manifest as war, destruction, and madness. Jung's work becomes not just personal but prophetic. He sees that the healing of the individual and the healing of the world are one and the same journey, the search for the self, the awakening of meaning. By the end of his descent, Jung has lost everything the outer world once gave him: status, certainty, simplicity, and gained something the world can never give: meaning. He realizes that the soul is not a myth. It is the living center of the human being, and that the purpose of life is not success or comfort, but individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is a lifelong pilgrimage, one that leads not upward to heaven, but inward into the heart of the mirror. Closing scene, soft ambient tones. Candlelight flickers in Jung's study. Narrator, soft, resonant tone. Carl Jung stepped into the darkness and returned with a language for the soul. His journey was not just his own, it was ours. For every human life, in its own quiet way, is a search for the self, a dialogue between what we are and what we are meant to become. He showed us that the soul is not found by looking outward, but by daring to look inward, into the mirror that has been waiting all along. The return and the light within, opening scene, soft dawn light breaking through mist, a lake reflecting the first gold of morning. Narrator, calm, luminous voice. The hero who descends into the darkness must one day return, for the treasure found in the depths is meant to illuminate the world above. After years of visions, solitude, and inner storms, Carl Jung emerges. He has crossed the threshold, faced the mirror of the soul, and returned carrying the light of meaning. But his greatest challenge is yet to come. How to translate the language of the unconscious into a form the modern world can understand. Return to the world. It is the mid-1920s. Jung has weathered his personal descent and survived the collapse of his friendship with Freud. He has been misunderstood, mocked, and even feared, but he has found a truth that cannot be denied. In his home at Kesnecht by Lake Zurich, he begins to build again, this time not a career, but a bridge between two worlds, the conscious and the unconscious, the human and the divine. He writes, teaches, paints, and dreams. His home becomes a sanctuary for those searching for meaning in a world scarred by war and spiritual emptiness. He no longer seeks approval from the scientific elite. He seeks wholeness. The tower at Bollingento embody this new way of living. Jung begins to build a stone tower at Bollingen, a circular house on the shore of the lake. Each stone is placed by hand. Each carving is a symbol, a memory, a message from his soul. He calls it his confession in stone. The tower becomes his external mandala, a physical reflection of the inner self. It is simple, ancient, almost monastic. Here, Jung writes and meditates, tending the fire. Watching the river flow, he feels closer to something eternal, the rhythm of life that exists beyond the noise of civilization. He writes, at Bollingen, I am in the midst of my true life. I am most deeply myself. This is the state of individuation, not isolation, but integration. A harmony between the inner world and the outer one, individuation. The path to wholeness, the concept of individuation, becomes the center of Jung's philosophy. It is the process by which a person becomes whole, by uniting all the fragments of the psyche, the ego, the shadow, the anima, the archetypes, and the self. Individuation is not about perfection. It is about balance. It is about learning to hold opposites, love and fear, order and chaos, reason and mystery, without collapsing into one or the other. He writes, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. To individuate is to become real, to face one's darkness, to embrace one's light, to accept that both are necessary for the soul to breathe. Dreams as mirrors. In the years that follow, Jung continues to study dreams, his own and those of his patients. He sees that dreams are like mirrors, reflecting the hidden truths of the psyche. Every symbol, every strange event, every face in a dream is a message from the self, guiding us toward what we need to see. He tells his students, the dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul. Through dreams, the unconscious becomes visible. The psyche tries to heal itself by balancing what consciousness ignores. A man dreaming of a flood may be drowning in emotion. A woman dreaming of flight may be yearning for freedom. A child chased by a shadow may be fleeing their own potential. To Jung, these are not metaphors. They are real psychic events. The unconscious does not speak in logic, it speaks in story, the world and its shadow as Jung grows older. The world outside mirrors the very forces he studied within. The rise of fascism, totalitarianism, and the mechanization of life show him what happens when a society denies its shadow. He warns that the collective psyche, like the individual psyche, contains darkness, and that repressing it will only make it stronger. He writes, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. Wars, he suggests, are the external eruptions of inner conflicts that humanity refuses to face. The shadow of the collective becomes the catastrophe of the world. To heal society, we must first heal ourselves. We must face the darkness within before it consumes us from without, the search for the self. In the modern age, Jung sees that modern humanity has lost its connection to the soul. We worship progress but have forgotten purpose. We have gained the world but lost the mirror that shows us who we are. He warns that without myth, without a living symbol, the human mind becomes hollow, filled with noise, but starved of meaning. He writes, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. To regain the soul, we must listen again to the inner voice, to the archetypes that speak through art, religion, and dream. They are not relics of a primitive age. They are the eternal languages of the human spirit. Encounters with the internal in his later years, Jung has profound spiritual experiences. He dreams of vast temples, luminous beings, and the voice of the self, the inner God image that resides at the center of the psyche. He understands that the self is not merely psychological. It is cosmic. It is the image of God within each human being. He writes, the self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. Through the self, the human and the divine meet. The mirror of the soul reflects not only who we are, but what we could become. Jung's final vision in 1944, Jung suffers a heart attack. He hovers between life and death for several weeks. During this time, he has a vision. He sees the earth from above, a radiant blue sphere floating in cosmic darkness. He feels immense peace, a joy beyond words. Then he sees a great temple and knows he is about to enter, but a voice calls him back. You cannot go yet. You must return to finish your work. He awakens. The vision remains etched in his soul, a reminder that life and death are not opposites, but mirrors of the same mystery. The legacy of the mirror. Jung spends his final years refining his writings and sharing his message with those who seek meaning. He warns of a future where humanity becomes enslaved to machines and forgets the language of the soul. He predicts that technology will create vast networks of distraction, mirrors that show only surfaces but never depths. He warns, man will discover that he is standing before a mirror that reflects only his own face and will mistake it for the world. Yet he does not despair. He believes that within each human being lies the potential for renewal, the power to awaken consciousness and restore balance to the world. The Eternal. Message on June 6, 1961. Carl Gustav Jung passes away at the age of 85. He leaves behind not a system, but a living vision, a psychology of the soul. He showed that the human mind is not a machine, but a sacred mirror of the universe itself. He taught that to know oneself is not to analyze, but to journey, to face one's shadow, to embrace the inner feminine, to listen to the whisper of dreams and the silence of the self, and above all, to realize that the path inward is the path outward, that the salvation of the world begins with the integration of the soul, the mirror and the modern soul today. Jung's message is more urgent than ever. We live surrounded by mirrors, screens, profiles, projections, but few of them show the truth. We have created digital personas, masks of perfection, while our true selves fade into the background. Jung would call this the age of the persona, where image replaces essence, and the collective unconscious manifests through the glowing glass of technology. But he would also remind us that every shadow is an invitation. The chaos of our age is the same chaos that births transformation. If we dare to look inward again, to face what we've hidden, the mirror may yet show us not vanity, but vision. The light within in the quiet of his tower. Jung once carved into stone these words, vocatus aqua non vocatus dies aderit. Called or not called, God will be present. It was the truth he had discovered through all his visions and suffering, that the divine is never absent. It waits in the soul's reflection, behind the shadow, beneath the noise. The mirror of the soul is not a window to the past. It is the living surface of eternity and each of us, when we dare to look into it with honesty and courage, becomes a bearer of light in a world that has forgotten its own face. Final scene, the mirror restored, music swells, strings and choir. The lake at dawn shimmers. A single figure stands before the water, narrator, calm, resonant. Carl Jung showed us that the soul is not a secret to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. He taught that the journey inward is the greatest adventure of all, not an escape from the world, but a return to it, armed with new eyes and a whole heart. For whoever looks deeply into the mirror of the soul does not find an answer, they find themselves. The descent and the mirror opening scene, faint echoes of a cello candlelight flickers across crimson pages. Narrator, low, calm voice. Every great journey of the soul must pass through darkness. For in the depths, beneath reason and form, the ancient forces of life still speak, not in words but in symbols and dreams and visions. Carl Jung called this the descent into the unconscious. To most it looked like madness. To Jung it was revelation, the rediscovery of a forgotten language, a language older than time. The language of the soul itself. The descent into the unconscious. Jung's nights grow longer. The visions come unbidden, fierce, poetic, terrifying. He no longer resists them. He records, paints, and listens. He begins to live in two worlds, the outer world of science and the inner world of myth. He writes, "The spirit of the depths taught me that my life is a story, and that the story is written within me." He understands now that the psyche is not a cold mechanism as Freud believed. It is alive, an ocean of symbols, each one with its own intelligence. He is not analyzing these images. He is in dialogue with them. This is what Jung calls active imagination, a conversation between the conscious mind and the living unconscious. Through it, he learns that every image, a snake, a child, a tree, a mountain, is not merely fantasy. It is the psyche's way of speaking, the voice of the soul. One night, Jung hears a voice say, "If you want to find your soul, go into yourself." He begins to speak with this voice. He calls it his soul, though it often feels like something greater, a being both within and beyond him. The dialogue is strange, sometimes tender, sometimes brutal. It challenges him, mocks him, and teaches him truths no book ever could. Through this dialogue, Jung discovers that the soul is not obedient. It is wild, feminine, creative, a force that refuses to be controlled by intellect or ego. This soul speaks to him in images of blood-red seas, blazing suns, ancient gods and serpents. It shows him that the divine is not lost. It has simply gone inward. The gods, Jung realizes, have not died. They have migrated into the human psyche. The Red Book speaks. Jung pours his revelations into what he calls Liber Novus, the Red Book. In it, he paints with luminous colors, inscribes dialogues with his soul, and chronicles his descent like a sacred traveler mapping an unknown continent. He paints mandalas, circular symbols that arise spontaneously from his unconscious. He doesn't yet know their meaning, but he feels their power. Later he will understand. The mandala is an image of the self, the divine, center of the psyche. Each mandala is like a mirror of wholeness. It appears when chaos threatens to tear the psyche apart, a spontaneous act of inner order. Born from the depths, the Red Book becomes Jung's mirror. Through its pages, he sees the vastness of the inner world and his own smallness within it. He realizes the soul is a being of infinite depth, and whoever looks into it sees not only his own face, but the face of the universe. The mirror and the shadow. As Jung's visions deepen, he confronts figures of power and terror. One stands out, a dark figure cloaked in mystery, who calls himself the Shadow. The Shadow is not evil, but everything Jung has refused to see in himself: anger, lust, ambition, cruelty, pride, fear. At first, Jung recoils, but the shadow does not disappear. It stands silently in the mirror of his soul, waiting. Jung writes, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. To flee from the shadow is to flee from half of one's being. To confront it, to integrate it, is to begin the process of becoming whole." The shadow becomes Jung's greatest teacher. Through it, he learns humility. He learns compassion. He learns that light without shadow is illusion, and that to deny darkness is to deny life itself. The birth of the archetypes. Jung begins to notice patterns in his visions, recurring figures that feel ancient, universal. The wise old man, the great mother, the hero, The trickster. These are not mere hallucinations. They are archetypes, the deep structures of the human psyche. They appear in every culture, every myth, every religion, because they live within all of us. The psyche, Jung realizes, is not personal. It is collective. We all share a vast inner landscape, a collective unconscious filled with symbols that have shaped humanity. Since the dawn of time. These archetypes are not dead myths. They are living energies. When ignored, they possess us. We act out their dramas without knowing it. When faced consciously, they transform us, giving meaning to our lives. Philemon, the inner sage amid these archetypal encounters. One figure emerges as Jung's guide, Philemon. He appears as an old man with wings of a kingfisher, half human, half divine. He teaches Jung that the mind is not limited to personal experience. It is connected to an infinite field of wisdom. Philemon becomes his inner mentor, his soul's teacher. Through him, Jung learns that thoughts and visions are not made by the ego. They arise from deeper sources, from the unconscious itself. He writes, Philemon represented superior insight. He was the one who taught me the reality of the psyche. Jung begins to feel that Philemon is not just a fantasy. He is an image of something eternal, the inner sage that exists within every human being, waiting to be heard. The mythic psyche. As Jung journeys deeper, his visions grow mythic. He sees himself wandering through deserts, climbing mountains, conversing with gods and demons. He realizes these are not random dreams. They are symbolic enactments of the soul's transformation. Every myth, every religion, every hero's journey, all are reflections of the same inner process. The movement from fragmentation to wholeness. The Greeks called it gnosis. The mystics called it union with the divine. Jung calls it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Individuation is not self-improvement or success. It is a sacred work, the reconciliation of opposites within the soul. It requires descending into chaos, facing the shadow, embracing the feminine, integrating the divine. The feminine returns in his visions. Jung encounters a powerful feminine presence, Salome. She is beauty, wisdom, danger, and love intertwined. At first he fears her. She represents everything his rational, patriarchal world has repressed. But over time, he understands that the feminine is not his enemy. She is the soul's missing half, the anima, the bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious. The anima speaks in dreams, art, and emotion. She is the source of creativity, empathy, and imagination. Jung's encounter with Salome transforms him. He writes, the encounter with the anima means becoming aware of one's inner feminine nature, the life-giving source of the soul. Through her, Jung learns to love the unknown. He learns that wholeness requires balance, the marriage of masculine and feminine, logic and intuition, science and spirit. The mirror deepens now. The visions are no longer just Jung's. They are mirrors of humanity itself. He sees how modern civilization has lost touch with its soul. How reason and technology have silenced the language of dreams. How people have replaced symbols with systems and gods with machines. Jung begins to fear that humanity is headed for a great psychic crisis, a collapse of meaning, a collective neurosis. He writes, man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. The world hangs by a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of man. In the mirror of his soul, Jung sees not just his own face, but the face of the modern world, fractured and afraid of its own depths. The call to balance. As the visions begin to subside, Jung senses a profound shift. The unconscious has spoken. The gods have returned. And now the task is to bring their wisdom back into life. He has descended into the mirror, faced his shadow, heard the voice of his soul, and touched the archetypal roots of human consciousness. Now he must ascend, not back into the old world, but into a new one born from integration. He writes, in each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves. This, Jung realizes, is the true mirror, the inner reflection that shows us who we might become if we dared to see. The red sun rising. As Jung finishes the Red Book, the world outside trembles again. The shadow of another war looms. But within Jung something new has taken root. Peace. He no longer fears the depths. He has learned their language. He has made the unconscious his ally. The descent has given him a vision of wholeness, a vision he will spend the rest of his life sharing with humanity. And so, the Red Book closes, not as an end, but as a beginning. A map, not for escape, but for return. Closing scene, a red sun rises over an ocean of symbols. Narrator, measured. Luminous tone. Jung entered the mirror of the soul and found not madness, but meaning. He discovered that within the chaos lies order, within the darkness lies light, and that the divine still speaks, if only we learn to listen. His descent was never meant for him alone. It was a message, a map, for all who would dare to face the depths and find themselves reflected in the mirror of the soul.